Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We usually spend our time dissecting the latest tech trends or, breaking down complex new research papers. But today we are taking a step back to look at the operating system of one of the greatest thinkers in modern business history.
It's a bit of a departure for us, yeah, but a
Yeah.
really necessary one.
Uh-huh.
We are kicking off an 8-part series on the mental models of Charlie Munger.
And for those of you joining us from around the world, maybe you're tuning in to improve your English, or maybe you're just looking for some clarity in a noisy world. This series is designed really for you. Munger was famous for cutting through complexity. He didn't use jargon to impress people, he used logic to get to the truth. But I have to admit, when I first looked at the outline for today, I was a bit skeptical.
Oh, yeah, skeptical.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, the core idea we're discussing is the inversion principle. And the headline summary is basically, if you want to win, just focus on not being stupid. It sounds, I don't know, a little too easy, doesn't it?
A bumper sticker, almost.
Exactly. It sounds like a bumper sticker. We spend our whole lives, especially in competitive fields like finance or tech, trying to be brilliant. We want the edge, the alpha. And now we're saying the secret is just don't mess up.
It does sound deceptively simple, I'll give you that. It feels counterintuitive because, well, our entire education system is built on forward thinking. We're taught to find the right answer.
To solve for X.
Right. But Munger and the mathematicians he admired, they argued that in complex systems like the stock market or life itself, trying to be brilliant is actually a fool's errand. The math actually supports the idea that avoiding stupidity is a much more reliable path to success.
Okay, so let's test that theory. This is card number 1 in the Munger operating system, the inversion principle. Before we get into the finance side of things, where does this actually come from? Because Munger didn't just, invent this while sitting at his desk at Berkshire Hathaway.
No, he was a collector of big ideas from other disciplines. He took this specifically from a 19th century German mathematician named Carl Gustav Jacob Jacobi.
Jacobi.
Yeah, and Jacobi was famous for solving these incredibly difficult algebraic problems, elliptical functions, things that would make your head spin.
The kind of math that usually has zero application to our daily lives.
You would think so, but Jacobi found that when he tried to solve these problems in a standard forward-moving way, he just hit a wall. The complexity was too high. But if he rephrased the problem in reverse, if he looked at the result he wanted and worked backward,
The solution became obvious.
it often did. His famous instruction to his students was, man must immer umkehren.
Which means invert, always invert.
Exactly. Think of it like a maze, a really complex maze on a piece of paper. If you start at the entrance and try to find your way to the center, you hit dead end after dead end. You have to constantly make choices, left, right, straight, without knowing if they're correct. It's just frustrating.
Right, because there are infinite wrong turns, but only one right path.
Precisely. But what happens if you put your pencil at the center, at the finish line, and trace your way back to the start?
It's usually a straight shot. There are no choices to make because the path is already there. You just follow it back to the beginning.
That is inversion. By starting at the end and working backward, you eliminate all the noise. You eliminate the guesswork. Munger applied this logic to life and business. He realized that complex human problems are just like that maze. It is very, very hard to calculate exactly how to succeed, but it's surprisingly easy to calculate exactly how to fail.
Let's ground this for the listener because success is such a vague term. Let's say our listener wants to be a successful investor. That's the goal. The forward-thinking approach is to ask, how do I become the next Warren Buffett?
And that is a terrible question. It's just paralyzed by variables. To answer that forward-looking question, you have to figure out, which sectors will grow? What will interest rates do? Which CEO is a genius and which is a fraud? The list of things you might need to do to be brilliant is basically infinite.
And most of us just freeze up when we face that list. We feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. So let's invert it. Instead of asking how to be a great investor, you ask, what would guarantee that I end up broke and miserable?
That is so much easier to answer. I can give you a list right now. Spend more than I earn. Buy high and sell low. Gamble on things I don't understand. Put all my money into one company that goes bankrupt.
See how concrete that is? You didn't even hesitate. The path to stupidity is clear. It's visible. The path to brilliance is foggy. Munger's entire philosophy rests on this asymmetry. If you can simply identify the specific actions that lead to disaster, and then obsessively avoid them, the math implies that you will eventually succeed. You win by default because you didn't lose.
It reminds me of that saying, there are old pilots and bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. You just survive by not doing the things that kill you.
That's it, exactly. And to really drive this home, Munger loved to use an analogy from the world of sports. It's a concept from a book called Winning the Loser's Game by a guy named Simon Ramo. It's all about tennis.
The amateur tennis theory. I love this comparison because I play a bit of tennis badly, and this resonates so hard.
Well, let's break it down. Ramo analyzed the statistics of tennis matches, but he separated them into two categories: professionals and amateurs.
Professionals being the people we see on TV, Wimbledon, the US Open, that sort of thing.
Right. When you watch Novak Djokovic or Roger Federer play, they're playing a winner's game. The statistics show that 80% of the points in professional tennis are won, meaning the player hits a shot that is so brilliant, so precise, the opponent just cannot return it.
It's because they've spent 10,000 hours mastering that skill. They can aim for the lines and actually hit them.
Exactly. But then Ramo looked at amateur tennis, the weekend warriors, the people playing at the local club, and the statistics were completely inverted. In amateur tennis, 80% of the points are lost.
They aren't won by a great shot. They're lost because the other guy hits it into the net.
Or hits it out of bounds. Or double faults. In amateur tennis, the outcome is determined by the loser, not the winner. If you and I go out to play tennis, I don't need to be good to beat you. I just need to be consistent. I just need to hit the ball gently over the net and wait. Eventually, you'll get bored or your ego will take over.
That's the key, isn't it? The ego. I'll try to hit that Roger Federer backhand down the line because I want to look cool or I want to feel that rush. And what happens? I shank it into the fence.
And I get the point. I didn't do anything special. I just waited for you to destroy yourself. Rameau's conclusion, and Munger's big insight, is that investing is almost exclusively a loser's game. Unless you're in the top, 0.01% of investors with supercomputers and inside info, you are an amateur tennis player.
That is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. We all want to believe we're the professionals. We all want to believe we can pick the next Apple or Tesla before anyone else does.
But that belief is exactly what leads to the unforced errors. When you try to hit winners in the stock market, when you try to time the top or short a craze, you are aiming for the lines. And statistically, you are going to hit the net, Munger says. Stop trying to hit winners. Just keep the ball in play. If you just avoid the unforced errors, you will outperform 90% of the market over a lifetime.
So if we accept that we are playing amateur tennis and our goal is just to keep the ball in play, we need to know what the net actually looks like. We need to identify the specific errors that take us out of the game.
Correct. And this brings us to the practical application of inversion. It's called the kill list.
The kill list, that sounds ominous.
It should. These are the things that will absolutely kill your financial future. And Munger and Buffett, too, have been very specific about what goes on this list. These aren't just bad habits. These are structural risks that can send your net worth to zero.
Let's go through the big ones. The things that, if we invert the problem of how to get rich, appear as the guaranteed ways to go broke. The first one on the list is always leverage.
Leverage. Borrowing money to invest. This is the #1 way smart people go completely broke.
Can we dig into the why on that? Because on paper, leverage looks great. If I have $100 and I borrow another 100 and the stock goes up 10%, I make double the profit. It's an accelerator. Why does Munger hate it so much?
He hates it because of the math of the downside. It introduces something called path dependency.
Explain that for us.
Sure. If you buy a stock with your own cash and it drops 50%, well, you still own the shares. You can wait. You can be patient. The path it takes doesn't really matter as long as the final destination is higher. But if you use leverage, if you borrow that money, you don't have the luxury of patience. If the stock drops 50%, your broker calls you. You get a margin call. You are forced to sell at the absolute bottom to pay back the loan.
So you get wiped out. You hit zero.
And in investing, zero is what's called an absorbing barrier. Once you hit zero, you can't play anymore. It doesn't matter if the stock rebounds next week and goes to the moon. You're already gone. Leverage turns a temporary decline into a permanent loss. Munger's view is simple. If you're smart, you don't need it. And if you're dumb, you have no business using it.
That's a great rule. Okay, item #1 on the kill list, leverage. Never risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. What's the second item?
The second one connects right back to that tennis player trying to hit the winner. It's what Munger calls addiction, or more specifically, the action bias.
The feeling that you have to be doing something.
Right. In most parts of life, Effort correlates with results. If you want to dig a bigger hole, you shovel faster. But investing is unique because often doing nothing is the most profitable strategy.
But that's so hard psychologically. We look at the screen, prices are moving, news is breaking. We feel like if we aren't trading, we aren't really investing.
That's the dopamine talking. And the financial industry is built to trigger that addiction. They want you to trade. They gamify the apps with confetti and flashing lights. Why? Because the croupier. The house takes a cut every single time you trade. Fees, spreads, taxes.
It's the friction.
Exactly.
Mm.
Every time you buy and sell, you're paying a toll.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trading options or jumping in and out of stocks, you are just bleeding money to the house. Munger's inversion here is simple. The person who trades the most often, almost always, has the lowest returns. Therefore, to maximize your returns, minimize your trading. Just sit on your hands. It sounds boring, but boring is what makes you rich.
It's the difference between entertainment and investing. If you want entertainment, go to the movies. It's a lot cheaper than day trading.
And that's cheaper, yeah.
Okay, so we avoid leverage and we avoid action bias. The third one on the kill list is something that I think affects everyone no matter how smart they are. It's trusting hot tips.
Or falling for what Munger calls social proof. This is a deep evolutionary trait. For thousands of years, if you saw your tribe running toward the river, you ran toward the river. You didn't stop to do a probability calculation. You just followed.
Because if you didn't and they were right, you died. Or if you stood alone, a lion ate you.
Exactly. We are wired to follow the herd. So when your neighbor or your taxi driver or some guy on Twitter says, this cryptocurrency is going to the moon, everyone is buying it, your brain just screams, don't get left behind.
That FOMO, fear of missing out, is a physically painful thing for people.
It is. But inversion asks us to stop and just look at the incentives. Why is this person sharing this tip? Do they really know something the entire market doesn't? When you invert the situation, you realize the odds of a random hot tip being valid are practically zero.
It goes right back to the amateur tennis game. Chasing a hot tip is trying to hit a winner with your eyes closed.
And usually it's worse than that. Usually you are the greater fool. You're buying because the price is going up, which is the exact opposite of value investing. You're buying high, hoping to sell even higher. That's a game of musical chairs. And eventually, the music stops.
So let's review the kill list. This is the practical tool for our listeners. If they want to apply Munger's operating system today, they need to take a vow.
A literal vow. You write these down and you say, I will never do these things. Number 1, I will never use leverage or borrow money to buy stocks. 2, I will never trade for the sake of excitement. I will embrace boredom. And 3, I will never act on a hot tip or buy something just because the crowd is buying it.
It seems so restrictive, though. It feels like you're taking all the tools out of the toolbox.
You're taking the dangerous tools out of the toolbox. You're taking the chainsaws away from the toddler. And here's the amazing part. If you simply stick to that kill list, if you just remove those 3 behaviors, you automatically rise to the top 10% of all investors.
Without being a genius, without knowing how to read a balance sheet perfectly, just by not self-destructing.
That is the power of inversion. You win by default.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is out there trying to be clever, trying to time the market, using margin to get rich quick. They are all hitting the ball into the net. By standing still, by being patient, and by being rational, you just keep the ball in play. And compound interest does the rest.
It really reframes the definition of smart. Smart isn't about raw processing power. It's about temperament. It's about discipline.
Munger always said, a lot of people with high IQs are terrible investors because they've got terrible temperaments. They can't control that urge to be brilliant. They can't accept the boredom of consistency.
So for our listeners, especially those of you navigating these concepts in a second language or a new market, take the pressure off yourself. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to understand every derivative or every crypto coin. You just need to know what not to do.
Focus on the defense. Build a fortress around your finances that keeps the stupidity out. If you do that, the brilliance sort of takes care of itself.
Before we wrap up this first deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to carry into your week. We've talked a lot about money, because that's where Munger is most famous. But try applying inversion to your career or maybe your relationships this week.
That's a great exercise.
Yeah. Ask yourself, how could I guarantee that I get fired? Be unreliable, miss deadlines, be difficult to work with.
And just don't do those things.
Work in a relationship, how can I guarantee my partner is miserable? Ignore them. Criticize them constantly.
Avoid those specific actions, and you'll be amazed at how much better things get. It's like magic.
It's not magic, it's inversion. Invert, always invert.
Fair enough.
This is just the beginning. We've laid the foundation. We know now that the first step is to avoid losing. But once we have our defense secured, we need to understand what makes the world spin. We need to understand why people do what they do, including ourselves.
And that is a rabbit hole that goes very, very deep.
Now that we know how to avoid losing, in the next episode, we will explore the hidden engine that drives all human behavior incentives. Munger famously said, "Show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome." You do not want to miss that discussion.
It's my favorite topic in the whole series.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Munger's mind. We'll see you in part 2.
See you then.